If you've played 7 Days to Die more than a week, something like this has happened to you.
No! What the hey?
Shout out to Crab Clown Jimmy, by the way, for that masterpiece. He built my base design deliberately wrong for comedy and accidentally created the perfect example of what we're about to break down. Because here's the thing, the game never really tells you the rules. It gives you blocks and it gives you the build menu and it kind of lets you figure out the hard way. But once you understand those rules, you'll never build a base that collapses like that again. Hopefully. This is structural integrity and it's about to save every base you build from now on. You can stack infinite steel blocks on one wooden frame and it'll never collapse under that weight. It sounds wrong, but that's how vertical support works. If you look at most of your blocks, you'll see that they all have a vertical support stat of yes or no, and this means that the block either does or does not provide vertical support. If it says yes, it can carry an infinite amount as long as it's connected by other blocks down to bedrock. If it says no, like say this dew collector, then it can't support anything above it. So don't go try building any dew collector pillars. I know, all of your base building plans have been ruined. The caveat to all of this is that every block in that stack needs to be vertically supported all the way down to bedrock. If you break any of the blocks in that chain, the whole thing above it starts weighing down the blocks around it, and that's where horizontal support comes in, which is where your bases fail. Anyway, that was very overdramatic. On to horizontal stability. So why did that happen? Mass. But mass is actually only half the equation. Every block also has a horizontal support stat. Let's take our wooden frame here. This has a horizontal support of 40 and 5 mass. That means it can hold 8 more of itself out horizontally, but a 9th will cause it to collapse. But if we take something like a steel block with a mass of 20, the wooden frame can only hold 2 of these and a 3rd will cause it to snap. How does it achieve this magical feat of holding infinite steel blocks above it while only being able to hold 2 steel blocks on the side? Stop asking questions, bucko. Video games are just stupid like that. Now, you'll also find that steel blocks have much more horizontal support, 300 to be exact. This means that they can hold up to 15 of themselves before snapping. But there's actually another strange quirk to all of this. Horizontal support applies to each side independently, so the steel block can hold 15 steel blocks on each of its faces without issue. But if you add one too many, to say this one on the left, the entire left arm collapses, but the rest is completely fine. So always be aware of the mass and horizontal support of the blocks you're using to avoid mistakes like we saw in the intro. So you're telling me I need to remember all of that? No, the game actually does tell you when you're about to mess up. You've probably just been ignoring it if you've had base collapse issues. Have you ever noticed that blocks kind of change color when you're placing them in 7 Days to Die? Did you ever wonder what that meant? Me neither, because thinking is for nerds. But if you want your base to not collapse without having to take a business admin class, you should be paying attention to these colors. When placing blocks, you'll see them change color. If there's no color or like a white color, you're fine. Yellow means you should really start considering supporting these blocks. If it's red, that block will cause a collapse. Where this becomes tricky is with reinforcing blocks. When you're reinforcing with a stone axe, you won't get a block ghost, and the problem is, you'll add mass without thinking about it, and the game doesn't have a way to warn you, which is exactly what happened to Jimmy in the introduction section. With that in mind, it can be a very good idea to keep a block in your inventory and check it against any blocks you plan to reinforce. This will literally show you whether or not that extra mass is going to cause a collapse, so you can know to add more support. But honestly, you should probably focus on adding more support than you might necessarily need, because as you may know, gravity isn't the only thing trying to bring down your base. Right. Zombies. All that structural integrity theory means nothing if you don't understand how the Horde interacts with it. There's 3 big things you need to know. One, they target tall pillars first if they can't find a path to you. So with that in mind, always have extra pillars as a means of supporting your base so it can withstand losing some of those pillars if something goes wrong. Two, if they fall long distances, they probably will enter something called destroy area mode. This causes them to be on your base for about 10 seconds, which can be disabled by damaging them. Regardless, you should try to always have traps near the base of your base to damage the zombies out of the destroy area mode, or a means to shoot down at them and damage them from your fighting position, or maybe grenades. 3, they are aware of the HP of blocks and will make decisions based on that, i.e. if you are building your pillars out of wood and your fighting area is made of steel, they won't bother going through the steel, they will target the wood and bring your base down from below. So focus your strongest blocks on the foundations and pillars of the base first to avoid them just undermining you. One thing you should also note is that most blocks, regardless of shape, will provide the same mass and horizontal stability. So a concrete plate is basically the same as a concrete block. That means you can reinforce your base without having to take up as much space using smaller blocks. Obviously, you won't be able to build on the same tile as those plates because of 7 Days to Die's grid system, but you can use this to do things like having really strong interior supports that have the support of like 5 blocks but only take up the room of about 1 block, allowing your base to be less cramped and give you much more room to move. As you can see, there's a lot of ways to lose your base, so let's talk about what you can do when a base is too important to lose. A very underutilized mechanic in 7 Days to Die is the ability to build anything you want for free in a test world. You just make a new world, you open the console with F1, and then type DM for debug mode and CM for creative mode. In the creative menu, located here, you can spawn in as much building material as you could ever want. With this, you can experiment in a world that doesn't matter before spending the 50,000 steel you before using the 50,000 steel you spent a while gathering in your main world. Also, if you want to play with specifically Horde Nights, press pause and you'll see this menu here and allow you to move the time around as you need it to set the day to 7 whenever you want. Instead, you can use the command st space 7000 space 22 space 0, which will set the day to 7000, the hour to 22, and the minute to 0, which will immediately put you on a day 7000 horde, by the way, so be ready for that. And of course, you can swap those numbers out for whatever you like if you need a specific day. Just remember that structure of st space the day space the hour space the minute. Now that you can control this test world, you should know about one last useful base planning mechanic, the structural integrity visualizer, which is located on the same menu as the time slider. Click to enable this, and when you go back into your world, you'll see the structural integrity of your base. Green shows completely supported blocks. Yellow is relatively healthy, but not fully supported. But anything orange or red needs to be provided with more support, or it's a major risk for your base to collapse. With that, you can plan your most important base design safely and relatively time efficiently in another world, and take that knowledge onto your servers or single player worlds without having to actually cheat or disable achievements in your actual world that you really do care about. But let's be honest, knowing this stuff and surviving Horde Night are two very different things. I'm going to be taking everything we just covered and building a new 2.6 Horde base for all you beginner base builders out there. When that's out, it'll be popping up on screen, so be sure to subscribe for that. We're trying to hit 100k by the end of the year, by the way. Hint hint. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.